15 disturbing movies you need to watch this Halloween. Whether you enjoy scary movies or not, there is simply something about Halloween night that will make you crave a good scare. Sure, not all horror movies will make you call your mom crying, but they will at least make you check under your bed before you go to sleep at night. Not everyone can handle scary movies, but it is important to keep an open mind and try new things every once in a while, and if it gets a little too scary, just remember the dead only roam freely on Halloween, for the most part. While some people will dress up in costume and party it up, the horror-loving folk will curl up with a bowl of fresh, slimy eyeballs and enjoy some Halloween classics. Or maybe, if they are feeling brave enough, they'll take out their trusted Ouija board and ask the spirits which horror movie they should indulge in. October is the most beautiful time of year, and although it goes hand in hand with evil, it is also paired up with candy and pumpkins, so what's not to like? Not digging the downtown scene this year? Well, there are some new terrifying movies that would just love to keep you company. So call up your buddies, organize a good old-fashioned movie night, and don't forget to bring a fresh pair of underwear. Trust me, you'll need it. Oh, and don't forget to shut your windows and lock your doors, or else Michael Myers might feel inclined to pop in for a midnight visit. 15. Ouija, Origin of Evil. Via screenrun.com. Via screenrun.com. Ouija, Origin of Evil comes out in theaters on October 21st, just in time for Halloween. So, if you're thinking of hitting up the movie theater, this might be the perfect movie for you to see, but make sure to keep a closed mind while on your way home, or something might just find its way in. Set in a spooky Los Angeles home, Ouija, Origin of Evil introduces you to a family who undergoes a vicious battle with the supernatural. A widowed mother and her 2 young daughters fight to make ends meet, but somehow always pulls through. How? Well, by scamming, of course. The family takes part in a series of fake seances made to direct the curious individual towards their home. However, when the family discovers a Ouija board, things change rather quickly. The youngest daughter, Doris, appears to become possessed by an evil spirit. For real. 14. The Purge 3, Election Year. For those of you who do not know what the Purge is, get ready to raise your eyebrows in intrigue. The Purge is a yearly, one-day event that allows crime, in any shape or form, to be tolerated by the state. In fact, you can do anything you want to anyone, and be forgiven the very next day. This allows civilians to purge themselves of rage, hatred and greed, therefore rendering them cleansed for the rest of the year. In the Purge 3, Election Year, we are reacquainted with Leo Barnes, who 2 years earlier lived through a life-changing purge night and now finds himself working as head of security for Senator Charlie Roan, who happens to be running for president. Roan's mission in life is to be elected president, and once and for all, abolish the day of the purge. Roan feels strongly about this matter, especially since 15 years prior, her entire family was murdered on that godless day. Unfortunately for her, not everybody agrees with her presidential candidature. 13. It Follows. It Follows was deemed one of the creepiest movies in years. Why? Well, when suspense, tension and horror meet together for a nightcap, what else can you expect? Immediately after watching this horror-driven film, you will get stuck inside of a nightmare that you cannot wake up from, and it will last for days. When Jay Height has an unusual sexual encounter with Hugh, her life changes for the worse. She begins to feel as though someone is following her everywhere she goes. He warns her that to get rid of this monstrous stalker she must engage in sexual activity with another person and pass on the curse before she is gruesomely murdered. At first, Jay believes Hugh to be absolutely insane, but it does not take long for her to jump on the loony wagon. Terrified, Jay tells her sister and her close friends about the curse and they desperately try to help her out of the worst sexually transmitted disease in the world. Well, Blair Witch. Many people did not enjoy watching The Blair Witch, but they cannot deny that it had some spooky moments and disturbing scenes. Like any other scary movie, its effects will be heightened by turning off all the lights, closing the blinds and turning up the volume. This film is mostly set in the deep, dark woods and will make you seek the comfort of your blankets. When James' sister mysteriously disappears in the Black Hills forest, he sets out to find her with the help of some college students. They group together and venture into the hills of the Maryland forest, hopeful that they will be able to locate James' sister. The group encounters a pair of locals that offer their help as guides, but as they get deeper and deeper into the forest, they begin to acknowledge that maybe the legend of the Blair Witch is more than just a tale to frighten children. 11. Lights Out? Lights Out is a go-to scary movie simply because it will scare the crap out of you while allowing you to sleep at night. A dark and frightening movie that will make you revisit your childhood's darkest corners and maybe even make you jump out of your seat. Rebecca, now all grown up, was sure that she left her childhood fears in the past. As a young child, Rebecca's fear of the dark had been so extreme that she had even been tested for insanity. Yet, somehow, her little brother Martin has begun to experience the same type of fears and she cannot help but feel as though his story mirrors hers in a frightening way. Unable to tell what is real and false once the lights go out, she is reintroduced to her childhood fears. Rebecca and Martin desperately try to unlock the truth behind their worst nightmare before all the lights go out for good. 10. The Babadook. The Babadook is a fresh and exhilarating horror film that will have you fearing the darkest depths of your house. First-time Australian director, writer Jennifer Kent blows away her audience with her undeniable talents in the dark arts of horror. Not only does she make you feel as though you are going to be next, but she also ties in the hardships of being a single parent. Amelia is a single mother who is struggling to raise her out-of-control son Samuel. Having raised him alone after her husband's violent death midway through her pregnancy, Amelia has found it impossible to sympathize with her child. Samuel has become aggressive, delusional, overbearing, and alienated from other children. One night, Amelia finds a book called The Babadook in their home and decides to read it to Samuel before bedtime. Disturbed by the book's content, Amelia cuts story time short and calls it a night. Samuel begins to obsess over the Babadook, and is convinced that he is coming to kill them both. Amelia begins to lose her patience and possibly even her will to control her own mind. 9. The Conjuring 2, The Enfield Poltergeist. The Conjuring 2, Enfield Poltergeist was just released this year, and received much praise from its viewers. So, if you have yet to watch this film, Halloween might be the perfect night to kick back with some friends and get ready to scream your butts off. Oh, and if you enjoyed the first movie, then you will be pleasantly surprised to find out that for once, a sequel was even better than the first. When Peggy Hodgson's husband leaves her to live with a neighbor, she finds it extremely difficult to support and raise her 4 children. Unfortunately for Peggy, this is only the beginning of her troubles. One day, Peggy's daughter Janet claims to have spoken to the spirit of an old man while sleepwalking, but Peggy shrugs it off as a dream, that is, until she begins to witness strange events of her own. Fearing that Janet has become possessed by a demon, Peggy seeks the help of the church and allows a group of strangers into her home in hopes that they will be able to put a stop to the haunting. 8. 28 Days Later. If you like zombie movies, then you're in for a treat. 28 Days Later is a gruesome film that quickly gets under your skin. Its ability to make you shudder and fear contagion is enough to make you become a germaphobe. This movie came out in 2003, back when zombie movies had begun to be deemed old news, but this epic film brought the genre back from the dead. 28 days before Jim wakes up from a coma, a group of animal activists make the biggest mistake of their lives. They invade a laboratory with the good intentions of freeing abused animals, but stumble upon a strange experiment instead. Although the chimpanzees appear to be in need of help, they were actually infected by a rage-causing virus. Despite the scientists' plea, the activists release the chimps, whom in return massacre their saviors and release the virus into the world. When Jim awakens in an abandoned hospital, he ventures into the outside world only to find it deserted, vile and forever changed. 7. A Nightmare on Elm Street. As a child, There were many reasons to be afraid of the bathtub, and Freddy Krueger was definitely one of them. A Nightmare on Elm Street first came out in 1984, and has since then terrorized the young minds of the population. Being afraid to see something strange while awake is one thing, but being scared to fall asleep is a whole other story. Before Freddy Krueger was a dream intruder, he was just your regular psychopath. Previously known as the Springwood Slasher, Krueger had a profound love for murdering children. His weapon of choice was a glove containing razor-sharp blades on every single fingertip, which he used more often than his actual hand. One day, to the town's dismay, a judge ruled Krueger a free man. Furious, the deceased children's parents decided to seek their own justice, and burn Krueger alive in the boiler room where he worked. Years pass and Krueger comes back stronger than ever, but this time in dream form, targeting the children of the parents who murdered him. 6. Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th is a movie that everyone must see at some point in their life. Although it hasn't aged as well as wine, it is a classic amongst slasher movies. Camp Crystal Lake has been shut down after many gruesome murders took place. That is, until a group of counselors reopened the camp in 1979, years after the last murder occurred. On Friday the 13th, a girl named Annie stops by a diner to ask for directions to Camp Crystal Lake, and immediately the people in the diner appear shocked and even angered that the camp has been reopened after all the horrific events that went on all those years ago. Unfazed by the townfolk's warnings, Annie continues on her way to the camp, and learns a little too soon that she should have heeded their warnings. As the camp counselors continue to prepare for the summer's festivities, a killer named Jason does his rounds. 5. Don't Breathe. Don't Breathe is a scary movie that happens to still be in theaters. It is described as incredibly suspenseful and terrifying. If you're a sucker for horror films, then you will quickly fall in love with this disturbing movie. Its storyline is based around a home invasion so frantic, it will surely leave you breathless. Don't Breathe is a story that makes you sympathize with the initial aggressors. When three Detroit buddies make the heartless decision to rob an old blind veteran, they quickly realize that they have just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Rocky, Alex and Money are desperate for cash, and so when Money hears about a blind man sitting on $30,000 cash, he decides to rob him blind. Unfortunately for these young thieves, they realize a little too late that they have decided to mess with the wrong guy. 4. The Cabin in the Woods. The Cabin in the Woods first came out in 2010 and was deemed one of the best movies of the year in any genre. The characters were lovable, the plot refreshing and the ending surprising. This is a go-to scary movie for anyone who has yet to see it. The Cabin in the Woods is the tale of 5 friends who decide to spend a quiet weekend in a subdued cabin in the woods. On their way to the cabin, the group stops at a gas station to fill up their gas tank and ask for directions. The gas station attendant comes off harsh, and unpleasantly tells them that they'll have no trouble getting there, but a load of trouble getting back. The group shrugs him off and proceeds to their weekend getaway. It doesn't take long before the 5 friends start to notice some weird activity going on around them, and when the cellar door flings itself open and they enter to investigate, they find themselves in quite the pickle. 3. The Exorcist. The Exorcist might not be as scary as it once was, but it is a classic nonetheless. Needless to say, back in 1973, it had the most macho of men sleeping in their siblings' beds at night. Till today, it is still revered for its exquisite acting and cinematography. An actress by the name of Chris McNeil lands a role in a movie and decides to temporarily move her daughter Regan and herself to Washington, D.C. McNeil and her 12-year-old daughter are usually attached by the hip, but suddenly the actress begins to notice a gradual slip in her daughter's behavior. McNeil brings her daughter to be evaluated, but the doctors cannot seem to find anything wrong with her once adorable daughter. Soon, Regan's behavior becomes so terrifying that her mother is forced to tie her to her bed. Fearing the worst, McNeil seeks the help of a Roman Catholic priest, as well as a psychiatrist, and they attempt to rid Regan of the devil's spirit. 2. Halloween. Halloween is a movie that first came out in 1978. and has since then become the grandfather of all psycho killer horror films. The movie begins like most scary movies do, with the killing of a young and beautiful girl on Halloween night. This time, however, it is done by Mike Myers as a young child, and the girl is his older sister. Flash forward 15 years, and the date is October 30th, nearly marking the anniversary of his sister's death. A doctor and his assistant are driving to a local sanitarium to pick up Myers and bring him to hearing, when suddenly everything goes wrong. Once arrived at the sanitarium, they realize that many of the mental patients are walking around unsupervised around the main gate. Myers suddenly appears out of nowhere and jumps onto the hood of the car, causing the doctor and his assistant to swerve out of control and abandon the vehicle. It is then that Myers climbs in and drives away, ready to project evil onto the poor souls that are unlucky enough to be on his slaughter list. 1. Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice is a classic that, unlike other films, does not worsen with age. This movie first came out in 1988, and has since then been watched over and over again, every year, around Halloween. The story begins with Adam and Barbara, a couple who has just bought a beautiful house in New England. One night, while on their way home, the couple encounter a dog on the road, and swerve out of its way, sending them to the bottom of a river. At once, they seem to reappear into their home, and find themselves confused on how they arrived so quickly. Barbara finds a book on the table that beholds the title Handbook for the Recently Deceased, and they soon realize that they did not survive the accident. As quick as a shutter, their house goes up for sale and is bought by the Dietzes family. Adam and Barbara are peeved by the fact that they cannot scare the Dietzes out of their home and start to seek outside help. Lydia Dietzes, the only daughter of the New York couple, ends up being able to see Adam and Barbara, and an adventure ensues as Beetlejuice is introduced into the mix of things.